Okay, I think we're on. All right. By the way, I wanted to thank you, Angel Abroad, for that very nice comment about being encouraged by yours truly, our enthusiasm. And same at you, because in order for somebody to recognize that enthusiasm, they got to be enthusiastic as well. So I really do appreciate that coming from you, because your enthusiasm is well noted as well. There we go. Thank you. We're going to pick up in, let's see, as annotated before, we're going to start with Revelation chapter 13, the latter part. And it gets a little interesting in there, so let's start with that. Hope everybody's having a good day. It's in Texas, it's getting hot. You know, this is like March. We're not even out of March yet, and it's getting to be a scorcher out there. And then if we have time, we'll get into a little bit of Revelation chapter 17. And we should all know, because I always talk about it, it's one of my favorite chapters, Revelation 13, because it identifies the dynastical rules. And you also see this motif in the when it comes to mountains. There's another word picture imagery involved with that is easy to pick up on. And again, we have Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And then you had the bad guys' kingdom after Rome in the Sanhedrin. Because what happened was, well, getting a little ahead of myself, you have the concept of, you have these two entities. It's kind of like the Jezebel and the Ahab effect, if you want to call it that. Death with Ahab and hell with Jezebel, or with the Roman state of affairs back in the Lord's day, and also with the Sanhedrin. Rome was death, the Sanhedrin was hell. And the Sanhedrin needed to go, stay with me, needed to go to Rome, the death, in order to get the Lord crucified. Now, of course, it was all for our benefit, but that's another subpoint. But the major point is that you have that same effect. And you had it with Ahab and Jezebel. Jezebel didn't have the power to kill, just like the Sanhedrin didn't have the power to kill. What she did was she went to Ahab because he had the power to kill. Ahab was the guy that originally wanted the vineyard. And this is so demonstrably emblematic, symbolic, the imagery involved. Just like the Lord said. And was explaining about the vineyard. It's the same concept. It's the same concept. So we need to keep some of those things in mind, but that's where that kingdom went. And then you had this synergy go on, this symbiotic synergy, where you had one take over for the other, but only for a limited time, because they went away, that construct went away of the Sanhedrin from 66 to 70 AD. They went away. And they didn't resurface until May of 1948. Well, that imagery and those things are encased right here in chapter 13 of Revelation, and also mirrored as well, especially in chapter 17. It gives more texture to it. And that's the really cool part, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, it's kind of like paint by the numbers when you were a kid. You painted by the numbers. This is how we paint by the numbers. Prophecy, we've said it before, it's kind of like driving down the road. You're looking in the rearview mirror in order to see what's up ahead. These are the road markers and the terrain distinguishers, if you will. They distinguish where we're at in that prophetic picture. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump in here. Well, here we go. Here we go. Just scrolling down. Revelation 13:10. Now this exemplifies perfectly the whole concept, and this also ties in. We talk about this a lot too. It also ties in to the fourth seal, which is the rider of the pale horse. And pale, etymology-wise, means chlorophyll or green. It means death. There's word pictures in that whole schematic of the meaning of pale horse, chloros, death. So, death in hell, capitalized. Death and hell, capitalized. Let's remember that as well. We'll tie that into more prophecy here in these two chapters as we go along. He that leadeth into captivity, there's your hell. Right there, there's your hell. He that killeth with a sword must be killed with a sword. Start at the beginning of verse 10. And he that leadeth into captivity, there's your hell right there. Captivity. It's this loop, continuous loop, that you can't get out of. Isn't that what bad doctrine is all about? People can't get out of bad doctrine. They can't. That is why we do all these videos. We don't reach very many people at all. That's not the point. The point is that somebody is listening. It might be just a few people, and that's fantastic, because it's their enthusiasm that they take out and they multiply it. You know, it's like the penny a day mathematical equation, where if you take a penny, you double it every single day, and then double that amount day after day after day, up to 30 days, you're going to have over $1 million. Same principle. And it's great. It's great. That's what it's all about. It's all about that enthusiasm for the word. He that leadeth into captivity, hell, shall go into captivity. He that killeth with a sword shall be killed with a sword, death. Do you see that? It's represented all over the place. It's also represented in the woman in chapter 17, not to get ahead of ourselves, in chapter 17 with the woman who rides the beast. That's your captivity right there. And conversely, the beast is death. Death and hell. Hell and death. They're interchangeable, but they're synergistic because unfortunately, it's that bad energy. Two parts shall be cut off. We know this is big concept stuff, but it's really not. It's really not. There's a language. It's the metaphoric language that we need to learn. There's a few people out there that speak it. Not very many, but there's a few. And we truly believe they're part of the 144,000. No question, no doubt. Men, women, believers. The remnant. That hardcore cadre of a few people that make up that last push literally to eternity. That's what this is all about. It's a preparation phase for eternity. Because it says in Revelation, it is done. Things will there'll be a delineation point or line where things will go into the eternal and never look back. That's what this is all about. It's all about the preparation phase that we're going through, aka also known as the short expanse of chronology known as the tribulation. That's what this is all about. So, here's the patience and the faith of the saints to round out verse 10. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. Here's your lamb with the two horns. And he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Do we see the imagery being presented? Two horns like a lamb. Now you can look for examples of that because we're talking about a religious entity. Are there two main factions in Christianity today that pertain to that? Now some people will say it's Christianity and Islam, or it could be. There's always two factions. Or two polarizations. Even the Muslims have it with the Sunni and the Shiites. The two horns could also represent the Catholics and the non-Catholics, or the Protestants, which actually means a protesting Catholic. That's what Protestants mean in that sense. So we have all of that. Everything is divided. You know, it reminds you of many tekel farson of Daniel 5:25. Numbered, weighed, divided. And also Zechariah 13:8-9, where you have two parts that the Lord's cutting off and they shall die. And the third part that we say all the time goes through the fire, that he will bring through the fire of diversity and all kinds of things to try, to refine, to test, to try that gold and silver. Those things of internal and eternal value, which is cool. That, Zechariah 13:8-9, takes the whole concept. You know how we are, we get off on these tangents. But what happens is, he exercises all the power of the first beast, and both he and the other beast that rises up out of the sea, which connotes and denotes all the imagery of the dynastical rules, because that one rule went off to kind of close the loop on that, though that one rule, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and then that Antichrist, or in place of Christ, diminishing against the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross, that morphed into its own hierarchy and went away. But it resurfaced again. But you also had the other aspect of those dynasties, that in the days of these kings, the Lord shall set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. That is, again, as we well know, 2:44 of Daniel. In the days of these kings, God shall set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. So that's encouragement, again, right there. Big time encouragement. And the thing about, this is where it gets very interesting, because it talks about, and he exercised this, talking about the lamb with the two horns, this polarity, if you will, or duality, if you will. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and it causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Whose deadly wound was healed. So it can't be, there's no way that it can be a physical construct to the beast, represented with the 7 heads, the 10 horns, 10 crowns, and all that, rising up out of the water. Because it later identified, well, no, we'll leave that for chapter 17. Because what we're looking at here are the dynamics of the deadly wound. Of the deadly wound. That entity doing business as DBA. That's one cynical way to look at it. Further shows up again in a different typecast, in a different type shadow, type anti-type, if you understand that terminology. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Now, it is not, since it's not going to be a physical construct or a physical anthropomorphization assigning human-like qualities to the Antichrist, because it can't be. So we need to get out for 1 minute. You have the people. This is why we get a little chagrin sometimes, because you have all these people that want to put things in what you call, the way we dubbed it years ago was as a literal linearist. Literal meaning, connotation, and all that. And linearism, when it comes to the linear chronological time frame involved. And that's what they are. Overall. Now there's always exceptions to the rule when it comes to eschatology, but that's not what is in question. Not right now. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image. An image. You know what image means? It means an icon. Do you know what an icon is? An icon is something that represents the overall caricature of that particular subject. Okay? When you talk about it, Charles Larkin was an iconographist, and he did all his dispensational graphs in drawings. That's called iconography. This was done back around 1910, 1919, somewhere in that area, and he published a book called Dispensational Truth. I have the book. And he drew out all the icons that represented John Darbyism and or the dispensations. Yeah. So when it talks about in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, there's that image. Now let's go into the etymology. And there's the etymology. Like we were saying, it means icon. A likeness, that is statute, profile, or presentation, resemblance, image. Of course, you're going to bring to mind the image of Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel. I love storms. You can hear the thunder outside. So there we go. That they should make an image to the beast. To who? The beast. It doesn't say physical antichrist. It says to the beast. Do we see that? It's not hard to see. To the image. We talk a lot about when you take a subject and you have to quantify it and then qualify it. Quantification, qualification. This is the quantification and the qualification right here to the image of the beast that it qualifies. Okay? But yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Because you have to have it in this order of the image of the beast, the icon, the representation, representative of the beast that it represents. It's like an advertisement, somewhat. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, is there any entity, let's frame this in another perspective, is there any entity in the world right now that you can think of that if you talk bad about them, you will be a persona non grata? And what that means is, let's just kind of couch it in politics. If you come out and say this one particular state, in any way, shape, or form, is not diligent in its speaking the truth, then you will be an outcast. You will say, like George Carlin, it's a club, and at that point, you will not be part of that club. It's the same thing here. The exact very same thing. If you say anything detrimental about that group of people over there, the six-pointed star people, you will be, again, end up, post haste, that means really quick, a persona non grata. Do we see that? Now, let's go through and read it again. And he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Whether it's literal or symbolic is beside the point. Because they have, going back to the Ahab Jezebel example, or syndrome, however you want to call it, it's death and hell. That also directly correlates to the fourth seal of the rider of the pale horse, death and hell. Do we see that? Because when it's talking about that they should be killed, it's talking about the death. That it goes because it's a direct representative of the first beast in that dynastical sense, and put in a modern day significance means exactly that they can do what they want. They have carte blanche. They have the money, the resources, this, that, the other. They can do whatever they want. And that's why it says in the first half of Daniel's, right under the explanation of that beast that rises up out of the water, it says, who can make war with the beast? Who? It's a redundant question. Nobody. Nobody. That's what we're seeing right now. That is exactly what we are seeing right now with the genocide in the world. You don't want to... You better get sealed. You better get sealed. That's all we're saying. Okay, so it goes on and it talks. It gives more illumination or understanding in 13:16. Now we're really getting into the misappropriated, misaligned scriptures that, you know, it's like the twinkling of an eye of 1 Corinthians 15:51 to 52. The twinkling of an eye is backed up when? At the last trump. But they don't take that into account. The 7-year dispensational rapture people. They don't take that into account. They don't understand all of the other harmonization of the, what's another word we could use? Orchestration of the seals, the trumpets, and the vials. We've said this a million times. The sixth seal, the seventh trumpet, and the seventh vial all end in one commonality. They all end in the wrath of God. So if that is the way it is, which is the way it is, the Lord comes back shortly, and we really can verbatim say with all confidence, shortly after that. You raptured dispensational John Nelson Darby. What is up with you people? Your flesh is what's blinding you. That's what it is. So here we go. The vaunted 3 verses. And he caused us all, both small, great, rich, and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. That mark, that charagma we've talked about the last video and many other videos, has to do with a badge of servitude more than anything else. It originally was etched as the charagma aspect of it goes. Thousands of years ago. It's a symbol of infamy. It's a symbol of the anti in place of against or diminishing the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. It applies to that. And people don't see it. They don't see it because they don't want to see it. It's just like they don't want to see where it says in 1 Corinthians 50:51-52 about at the last trump. They don't want to see that either. Do we see that? No pun intended. To receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. What does this connote and or denote? Your forehead is, what do you think? How do you feel? What's your opinion? And your right hand is, that's a euphemism. It's a metaphor for work. What are you working at? What does your work consist of? Because if your work consists of the thesis, the non-mitigated thesis, the non-melded thesis, the non-amalgamated thesis, the pure thesis, in other words. You know, Revelation 3:15 about the cold, the hot, and the lukewarm. Or George Frederick Hegel, his codification of the same concept, way after the Lord, but he stated the thesis, the anti or antithetical thesis, is amalgamated and blended into an ad hoc mixture, which produces the sin thesis. And it sounds like S-I-N, but it's actually spelled S-Y-N, T-H-E-S-I-S. So if you pertain, the great thing about it, if you pertain to the work of the promulgation of your faith through that representation of keeping your faith hot with enthusiasm, thank you, Angel Abroad, again, then that is a good thing. You're not blending it with the cold. It does not equal the synthesis and or the lukewarm aspect. Okay? Okay. And no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Yeah, because we're talking the commodity involved here is a spiritual commodity. If that temple is now within, which it now is, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, where the Holy Spirit indwells, that commerce, that economy, and those accoutrements of commerce again, are the things that are being traded and or sold and or bought. The economy, the remnant economy is still there. That's the good news. But the other economy that pertains to the great falling away, if you want to look at it like that, of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, has been tainted latter days. That is how, right here is how that economy has been tainted. Again, especially in the latter days, like right now. And the other, because again, you have the quantifier with the mark of the name of the beast, another quantifier, and then the qualifier is the number of his name, which is 666. We have always submitted. You've always heard us talk about the 6-pointed star. 6 points, 6 inner triangles, 6 unilateral sides. See, when the Lord kicked out the money changers, let's couch this in a different reference. When the Lord kicked out the money changers, it had to do with that commerce. Right there in his temple. It's his temple. He can do whatever he wants. He kicked him out. That was the micro aspect of it. Now we're in the great big picture. Hate to use that cliche, but we're in the great big picture of the macro sense for the end times. Right now. So that buying and selling is also correlative of who it is that is sitting in that person's temple. Okay? It makes sense. All this scripture makes sense. It always has. It always will. Had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Because these are mystical concepts. That name and number of the beast are mystical. It's a little enigmatic, but it's what it represents. It represents the charagma. It represents that 6-pointed star that got, again, Stephen killed, Acts 7:43, that looks back at Amos 5:26, that we talk about all the time. It has that direct correlation to Molech, Cheyenne, Remphan, the star of your God. Paul knew about it. He was right there. He heard the same speech, and he was incensed. And he says, "Hey guys, they took him outside and they says, hey guys, put your coats. I'll guard your coats so that you can work out your swinging arm a little bit better here. Go see those rocks over there. Go get those. Those look like good ones." You can't get any worse than that. But then we know the rest of the story on the road to Damascus. All right, and the last, jump down right after 17. Here is wisdom. Let he who hath understanding count, etymology-wise, calculate the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, and its number is 603 Here's wisdom, one more time. Here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count, or calculate, the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, and his number is 603 All right? 600, easy. 60 and 6. This is, again, what you call a geometrical equation. And you want to know the reason why? Because at that time, they had no numbering. The Hebrews at that time, they had no numbering system. They weren't going to use the Romans. They weren't going to use the Arabic. They had no numbering system. But they had a kind of a decimal kind of thing. And the whole star concept, as above, so below, Aleister Crowley, do what thy wilt shall be the whole of the law of the layman, all that occultic demonism that Aleister Crowley espoused to. If you know anything about him, he wanted to be the most evilest man that had ever existed. And then out of that spawned the likeness of Anton Xander LaVey, 1966, with the Church of Satan. Kind of a side note. But that whole concept of 603 that we say all the time is representative of the 6 points, the 6 inner triangles, and the 6 unilateral sides. It's right there before your face. So before you get into any of this claptrap about kingdom now theology, or any of the other stuff about Jewish supremacists, that you're Jewish supremacy, or supremacist, or that you've given all your birthright. No, it's the same covenant. It was translated over, having passed over, having been born again as spiritual Israel, as born again Israel at the cross of Christ. That is the remnant message. Those are the remnant that even Paul talks specifically about. But Paul was an orator and a theologian, bar none. That means he was top of the Tiger Woods or whoever, but he knew his stuff, and he knew these things. He knew that when Stephen, getting back to the star of your God, that Stephen eloquently stated in Acts 7:43, that again looks back at Amos 5:26, he knew what Stephen was talking about. So when it gets over, and when it gets down to the nitty-gritty and the crunch time, for it's the number of a man. Yeah, we'll close it out with that. It's the number of a man. Is there any entity out there where it combines the two concepts? This is a redundant question. We're begging the question, as the lawyers say. Is there any entity out there? Can you scratch your head and think of any entity out there that has that same geometrical equation to it, equaling the 6 points, the 6 inner triangles, and the 6 unilateral sides, that is identified as the star of who? We'll give you a hint. It starts with a D. Delta, Alpha, Victor, India, Delta. There we go. We'll close it out with that. If you're Remnant, please stay Remnant and help get this word out there. Show your enthusiasm, and we'll continue to march. We'll be back at you and have some more. We'll get into Revelation 17, the next broadcast, and we'll jump right in there. That's a fun one, too. That is a fun one. Because truth is fun. When you get on this side of truth, it is fun. And that's why we enjoy doing what we're doing. I love you guys. We'll talk soon.